We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I did want to thank Stuart Little for providing lunch for us all. Thank you very much, Stuart. Anything you wanted to mention to us? All right. Well, we certainly appreciate your willingness to grab lunches for us all and to make this happen. So we'll go ahead and get started. First thing on the agenda is election of committee leadership. As you guys will recall, we generally rotate back and forth between a House and a Senate chair. And I was the chair of this past committee. And so we need a chair, preferably from the Senate side. So do we have a motion as it relates to someone to chair the Senate from the Senate this year? If not, I will make a motion that we have Senator Warren, chair of Senate Judiciary, be the chairperson for the 2020, what is this, 2024? Okay, second by Senator Aletha Faust-Godot. Do we have any additional nominations for that position? All right, seeing none, all in favor of having Senator Warren be the chair for the 2024 Russell J. Jennings Joint Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All right, she is the chair. You want to take over the microphone?
Sure. Well, thank you, Representative, and thank you, committee. And big shoes to fill, and we want to thank Representative Owens for the fine job he has done leading the committee over this last year and his additional membership on the committee in those other years also. So our next order of business is to elect a vice chair, and as is usual tradition and protocol for the committee, it would be a vice chair from the House, and preferably, do we have a nomination for that? Senator Faust-Godot.
Madam Chair, did you say from the House? So
Yes, ma'am.
Chair, Senate, House. So I nominate Representative Joella Hoy, if she would accept.
Okay. Is there a second? Seeing a second from Senator Corson. Are there other nominations? Yes, Representative Smith. Thank you. I'll go ahead, and we have the second from Senator Erickson. Any other nominations? Not seeing any. Oh, yes, Senator Faust-Godot.
Madam Chair, thank you. I think you know me by now. I always like clarification. So is it not where the chair is a senator and the Republican Party and the House be from the Democratic Party, or no, or anybody?
Thank you for that clarification, because you are, it's important for that clarification, and I needed to step in and clarify that the vice chair, just like our standing committees and our other joint committees, the chair and vice chair would be from the majority party, and then we do elect a ranking minority member. So the vice chair position would be a Republican, preferably, and is usual practice, from the House. So we're going to then accept the nomination for vice chair, Representative Owens. Are there other Republican nominations that we have for vice chair? I'm not seeing any. Then all those in favor of Representative Owens for vice chair signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries, and we have our vice chair. Next, then, we are looking for ranking minority members. So Senator Faust-Godot, did you have a nomination? From, it doesn't matter.
I don't think it matters.
But it would generally, well, I don't think it matters. Does it? It doesn't matter. Okay. It does matter. Okay, let's get some clarification. So in the years that the House chairs the committee, it would be a House member ranking minority, and in the years that the Senate does, then it would be a senator as the ranking minority member. So do we have a nomination for Senate Republican for, or excuse me, Senate Democrat for ranking minority member? Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would nominate Senator Faust Godot.
Thank you. And a second we have. Are there other nominations? Not seeing any, then you all have heard the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries, and we have our ranking minority member as well, Senator Faust Godot. Thank you, committee. Next, we're going to move on to committee discussion, and we have on our agenda proposals for 2024 interim study. We do have a list of recommendations from the interim committee report to the 2024 legislature. That list should be in front of you all. This is the annual report, and I'm going to review it just a moment. Committee, looking at our annual report from 2023, committee, it looks like a lot of these have already been taken action upon, except I see the fifth item down. The committee recommends a comprehensive review of the funding mechanism for community corrections. If that would be of interest for an interim study for 2024, if before we have a motion or entertain a motion on that, does KLRD have any updates for possible review or possible consideration for recommended 2024 interim study?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jillian Block with Legislative Research. To clarify, are you asking for the updates on everything, or do you just want to know about the community corrections?
I'm sorry. We'll have a brief update on community corrections and then possible other 2024 interim studies.
I see. Thank you. So as of right now, we, where'd it go? There it is. The update on the comprehensive funding mechanism, or the funding mechanism for community corrections, has not been assigned to a committee for study. It was in the full list of recommendations, which can be found in the entire report. This is just the summary page at the front. It was requested that the LCC identify a committee to move forward with that, but that again is just a request. So if the committee would choose to take initiative on that, that would be appropriate. And then the others, there's a few that we would need to check with agencies to see where they stand. For example, I believe it's the sixth one down with the Department of Wildlife and Parks, are working with the Department of Corrections and Division of Tourism. We have some updates that we received in community, or the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, which we can send that testimony out if if the chair would prefer that. And then the KDOC energy audit right now in the budget process has not been appropriated. And so that is at this moment not going anywhere. And then the last recommendation was to remind the committee to give future recommendation to, or future consideration to that, was the intent of that one. So that might be something that the committee would consider. And then the two pieces of legislation. One of them is on their way to the governor, House Bill 2491, with unanimous support in both chambers, was to move the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center fund from fee-funded to state-funded and make that swap. And then House Bill 2490 was defining incrementally. That one has been amended by the Senate committee and is, I believe, on its way to conference. And then the provisions of it, as introduced, are in Senate Bill 420.
Thank you. We had a question from Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to provide a recommendation. Many of you know we had a bill this year that got a hearing in both Senate Health and then House Appropriations about a nursery program for incarcerated moms. It had a lot of positive feedback. One of them was, let's iron out some details and come back again next year. And I've spoken with Representative Owens, and we thought this committee could be a good one to do a little bit of a deeper dive. So a couple things that I think would be beneficial. Nebraska's been doing it for 20, 30 years. So I would love to see a presentation from them about what works, what doesn't. They, for example, have some pretty innovative methods when it came to women helping each other with some childcare so that they could still do their programming that was already needing to take place. So I think hearing from them would be good. We've also uncovered and discovered a little bit more of the connection with DCF and for the babies that are born while they're at the correctional facility, or if babies that are born just prior to coming to the correctional facility, all 10 of those went to DCF. So it'd be good to know from them how many of those children went into child need of care. If they were 3 months, could they potentially still be eligible for this program? Let's study some best practices. Final thing, Kansas Department of Corrections was in favor of this. They'd like to see it happen. I think their fiscal note was a little, in my opinion, high, and so I would love to work with them on how can we be a little more innovative on getting that fiscal note down. So I would love to see us study that, and I'd be really happy to work with our committee's leadership to help set up some of those presenters and speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. I can tell you're passionate about this subject, and you've done some background work on it, so thank you. Committee, before we decide and vote on any of the recommendations, do we have other recommendations that want to be discussed? Yes, Representative Owens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have two. The first would be the consideration of a discussion around the Hutchinson Prison. We know that made it in the governor's budget recommendation this year to spend $377 million on a new prison. I personally wasn't convinced that it needed to happen, and I didn't feel that we had given that truly due discussion and regard before making that kind of a commitment. So I wondered if it wouldn't be possible. I realize Hutch is a little ways away from here, but I think a field trip might be in order for us to take a tour of that if we as a body are considering spending that kind of money. So that would be the first recommendation that I would have, a review of the Hutch Prison and maybe a field trip. And then the other one is a conversation that's come up a number of times regarding, it's a program called Work Keys, and it connects inmates that are in the system and helping prepare them to get out of the system. I know there's been some conversations among providers in that space, but I think that further discussion on that software or a similar software that, again, continues to help prepare inmates for exiting the system would be in order. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other recommendations for possible interim study? Yes, Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't see over there. I would like to request a brief informational hearing on what would be, this bill would be dead after this session, but it's based on SB 280 that's been referred to Senate Judiciary, getting some information on our self-defense and use of force laws, particularly as it relates to the initial aggressor standard. And it also addresses immunity from criminal prosecution for use of force cases, and also has a data component there. I'd be interested in getting some more information on that.
Thank you. And any others? I'm not seeing any, so I'll ask the reviser. We do have several recommendations here. Do we discuss each and have a motion and a second, or do we do the whole slate, or what's the procedure here? Just a moment. Yes, Representative Heiberger, but hold on a second, Representative. I'm learning from the chair from last year that the chair receives the recommendations and then provides the list of recommendations for the 2024 interim study. So with that, then, Representative Heiberger, did you have a question?
It may be related. In the past, it's been practice to keep the list of possible subjects open for a while so that we can submit some after we have another week or two to think about it.
Okay, so right now, the possible considerations for the 2024 interim study are, there's two from the 2023 report of this committee. One is the committee recommends a comprehensive review of the funding mechanism for community corrections. Another is looking at Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, conducting a joint project, possibly with Corrections and Division of Tourism at the Department of Commerce, to assist with maintenance and repair of public amenities at state parks. Those are two of the recommendations from this committee in 2023. And then we have 4 additional new ones you have heard. One would be considering a nursery program for incarcerated moms. Another would be a review of the Hutchinson Prison, as well as a possible field trip for the committee. And another would be the Work Keys. Is that a computer program? A computer program? And then another would be an informational briefing on Senate Bill 280 regarding self-defense, use of force, and immunity laws. So that's the list we have, and we will keep the list open. Is it required that further recommendations be made in committee, or can they simply be mailed or emailed to the chair? So we'll take those recommendations if you'll email them to me, and if you'll email those to me, that would be appreciated. And do we have to have a closing date for that at this time, or what's the usual practice?
I left it open for months
And
until you really got to solidify that,
We'll,
what that looks like.
we'll leave it open, and I'll remind the committee, hey, it's closing in a week, and make sure you get your recommendations in. And so the recommendation is, since these are requests, we're going to have to get approval from the LCC to meet as an interim committee to study these items. So when you make your recommendation, would you please recommend how many days you would like to be approved by the LCC for your particular review or study? So, and historically, for the committee to meet in total to review all of our items that we're going to be review, historically the request is made for 3 days of an interim committee. So we will likely make that same request. We have several recommendations, don't know which ones we'll be studying, but please make sure to get your recommendations in. Thank you. Is there other orders of business for the committee? Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this question might be for staff or from the previous chair. So this committee, we visited the Women's Correctional Facility here in Topeka. I was wondering if there's an update on any of the upgrades that were supposed to be made, or some of our requests, and/or does that go along with Senator O'Shea's request of the women in their babies? Madam Chair or Vice Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Was that of the Topeka facility? So I have visited that with a group, and I have seen, we had the tour, and we have heard that, they were pointing out, here's the changes here, here's the changes there. But a more thorough update, if we have one from research, would be helpful. Senator Fasquedo?
Madam Chair, so I'm speaking of, one year we toured and we saw where women were in bunk beds in a boiler room. And I was wondering if they ever got that.
That hasn't, well, what I saw, that hasn't been changed yet, so. But if we could have an update from research, so I'm making sure I'm speaking accurately.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that is not information I have at this time, but it is common and best practice for this committee to receive an annual update and an annual report from KDOC. We can certainly specifically ask for them to include elements on that in their report this year.
Representative Heiberger, thank you.
Madam Chair, can we add that to our agenda? Just a general update from KDOC about facilities and facilities planning?
Sure, if we could make sure that for our next meeting, we have an update from research about our prior requests, and any other requests that have an update would be appropriate at this time from research, if you have any of those. Hold on, I wanted to see if research had any further updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any updates of standing requests for information from our October meetings, but I could clarify what it looks like we're asking for at this time, which is specifically for KDOC to give us more information on the Women's Correctional Facility. And I had another one for specifically to follow up with DCF on the whether the children that were either born into the in corrections or just prior to, how many of them ended up in St. cases or with next of kin and things like that. Does that sound accurate, Madam Chair?
It does. Does that sound thorough to the committee, or are we missing some? Okay. And then I saw some hands up. So Representative Heiberger and then Representative Carlin.
I think that was just clarified. I was just going to make sure that my request was for the KDOC to make the presentation, and I think that was clarified. So,
thank you. And Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, we spent some time last interim on the driving restricted license issue and trying to get some of the crimes that in like over 800 statutes or bills had addressed. If you do this crime, you can't drive for, so long. And we were going to work on driving. And we had one bill this year, I believe, passed the House. I do not know where that is, but it was on one specific issue. And we had so many. Are we still working on that? And can we continue to do that? Because it is important to get people back to work, and they may need to drive to do that or pick up their kids and this and that. And that was the one bill we had was pretty much what we had asked to do and review all the statutes to see where that was appropriate. So maybe one of you know. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. That was the subject matter of an interim committee, and Senator Wilborn chaired that committee, and I'm not sure who was the vice chair. It was not this committee. It was a separate committee to study that with the stakeholders in the room, and some recommendations were made, and those became Senate Bill 500 this session. Those did come through Senate Judiciary, and it did pass the Senate, and it went to the House, and the House amended it, and it has been sent to Conference Committee. So that is currently in Conference Committee with Senate and House Judiciary. And so we'll be taking a look at that, and it did address restricted driving privileges for those who have had a a suspended or revoked driving license. And a lot of work has been put on to that issue by Senator Fasquedo for the last couple of years, and so it was put together in a bill as a result of the interim committee, and we're taking a look at it in conference. You bet. Other questions? Not seeing any. Then that's the end of the agenda that I have for today. So if there's not any further business, I would please ask if you have recommendations for interim study, please get those turned in, and so that those can be part of what we're taking a look at. Are we going to advance or not? And please be aware, looking at your email for any further committee meetings of this committee that we'll be putting together as the need arises. And with that, then, thank you everyone for your attention, and to staff as well for putting the meeting together and helping us out. And with that, then, we are adjourned.